Hey everybody, Ty here. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope everyone is paying attention with this one because we have a tropical storm here now in the name of Melissa that could do really just about anything. This could be the storm that steals the headlines for the Atlantic this year. I know that a lot of you have seen a very quiet season, not much in the way of US impacts, but we have seen some big storms. And of all the storms, this is probably the last place I would have wanted this to form, mainly due to the fact that the waters over here, they've been untapped, and we have some synoptics here to go along with it that don't really help the cause right now. Now, one thing I will say, as of right now, US impacts look unlikely. Still not off the table yet, but we're seeing some positive signs so far. It's a little bit too early to write it off just yet. So, mainly looking over at Florida Keys, southern Florida Peninsula. But the areas I'm probably most concerned with this area right now, definitely going to be over towards Haiti, Jamaica, and also Cuba. So let's go ahead and get into some of these synoptics here and why I'm so concerned with this. And for one, we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at the satellite imagery here, and you can see it in the top right hand corner. That is Melissa, by the way. Looks a little bit disformed, almost a little disorganized. That's because it is. We have some very strong wind shear that is actually off towards the north and west of this storm, and that's going to be a prominent feat, at least over the next few days. Over time, though, that wind shear is going to start to diminish a bit over the next 48 hours. And this is the point where we would start to see Melissa really begin to take shape here and strengthen. And I'll put it to you like this. 999 millibar low pressure center is not all that impressive typically, but I don't really see the GFS ensemble member usually pulling up a pressure like this out in the ocean. Not often. So that usually indicates that it's a much stronger storm than what's indicated on here. Typically with this, that's usually a strong hurricane or even major hurricane at this point. And the big reason as to why I would expect it to strengthen potentially so significantly is due to the sea surface temperatures. Look at this. We're dealing with 30 plus degrees Celsius temperatures here. And if you want to convert that into Fahrenheit, just simply multiply the number you see here by 3. So 30 times 3, I mean, it's 90. So considering the fact that typically about 80 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit is what you would require to get a tropical system going, get it to really strengthen up to a tropical storm, hurricane, and beyond, this is basically like bathwater. And what's most concerning about this is the fact that Melissa's forward speed right now is agonizingly slow. It's at 2 miles an hour. So regardless of what happens with this, whether it strengthens into a monster, which honestly, if we go ahead and take a look at our cone of uncertainty here, this is expected to become a major hurricane. The big problem we'll have here, regardless of that, it's going to be the impacts. The fact that they're going to be in such long duration. Flooding is probably going to be the biggest issue of all the hazards, just simply due to sheer longevity. And then the thing is, if we were to actually go ahead and continue to go forward here, it's not like the wind shear really goes away, but it keeps things kind of stagnant over there. The storm just does not move. We're looking almost at 192 hours out, and the storm really hasn't made much progress. In this situation here, from this model, it looks like it's passing the Bahamas at this point, almost a week from now. So to put in perspective for you, typically when we're looking at tropical storms and hurricanes that are racing through the Atlantic, they're on average moving about 15, maybe 20 miles an hour. To put in perspective again, this is moving at about 2. So you can see where the concern really lies with this. And if this does strengthen into a major hurricane like it's expected to, these impacts being dragged out for longer, and with the circulation never even making it over land here, like the scenario that's being painted by the National Hurricane Center, this becomes a problem very quickly. Now, if we look at this again, another thing that you'll notice is if this takes a little bit more of a shift towards the west, this draws ever closer towards the Florida Keys and maybe the southern peninsula of Florida here. And then these impacts end up being dragged out maybe a little bit further. So anywhere towards Havana, all the way towards the Florida Keys, maybe even as far north as Miami, you do still need to be watching this. If you're over towards the Gulf Coast states, outside of outside of the southern Florida panhandle or peninsula here, I should say. I don't know why I keep mixing those two up. You don't have much to really worry about, but if you're again anywhere on the southern end of I-95, you need to be very, very watchful of this. No reason to be scared, no reason to make evacuation plans or anything like that now, but you do want to keep an eye on this. Definitely better to err on the side of caution here. Now, what's most impressive with this is the fact that a lot of other models, not just the GFS ensemble, goes along with this really blowing up into a monster here. This is the HAFS model. This is the A model. So notice how this is kind of at a slow burn. We're at 54 hours out. Hasn't really strengthened all that much. We're still dealing with the tropical storm at this point. Watch what happens as we go past this point. Watch how this thing just becomes an absolute giant here. And it is crazy to see a low pressure of about 904 millibars on here. Will that be the exact pressure that we see? Time will only tell. But the fact in the matter is a 904 millibar central pressure for a system is ridiculous. That is category 5 level strength that you're talking about here possibly coming into play. And again, that's not the only model that's showing that depiction here. This is another model. It's a sister model to it, the HAFSB. And again, same thing. First 48 to 60 hours. Not a whole lot to write home about this, but watch this. Once again, this actually gets into the 800s, which is crazy to think about. And there's other models that I can go with too. The HWRF, it's one of my favorites to look at here. By the time we go further along with this, at its peak here, even though this is a little bit weaker in comparison, a 950 millibar low pressure center, actually 945 at its peak here as it's heading towards Cuba, and this is with an early turn, mind you, that's still category 4, category 5 possibly, just based off the pressure alone. If we're looking at the forward speed, I'd maybe say category 3, maybe a little bit more, but it's not just also the sheer strength of this storm, it's also the size because of how long it's going to take to move here. It's just going to continue to grow. So this is going to be a big time storm over towards the Caribbean. Like I said, U.S. impacts seem uncertain but rather unlikely at this current point in time. But also given the fact that we've seen the continual trend off to the west here, does lead me to have a little bit more concern. But either way, this is going to be probably the most significant storm of the year, if nothing else. If you're over towards the U.S., not as much to worry about. But if you're over here, or if you know anybody over towards Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, you do need to be watchful of this system as well, because this has all the makings needed to be a big problem, to say the least. And the other limiting factor that we typically look at when we do these tropical outlooks and tropical updates is, of course, dry air. Now, notice there isn't really a whole lot of intrusion from the dry air at this point. In fact, the moisture only deepens as we go further and further along, which again further kind of solidifies the thought that there's a high, and I mean a very high ceiling for this storm. And it's got a lot of people alarmed, and I would go as far as to say rightfully so. You do need to be watchful of certain people. Make sure that there are people that are trustworthy, because I know there's going to be people using this for clout. But the fact in the matter is, though, I think that a major hurricane that could even push category 4, category 5 in October isn't unheard of. Now, the big thing for this to overcome, of course, is the wind shear. And this area is known for tearing storms apart. This is called the Caribbean graveyard for a reason. And how fitting is it that we're near Halloween as this storm is over here? So we hope that it can do its magic, but if not, the ceiling is pretty high. In fact, if we look at the intensity models, it kind of further backs up the claim. Most models will have this coming in as a major hurricane by next week, and some of them are even pushing towards category 5 at this point. Now, of course, we'll be watching this trend in particular to see whether or not we end up seeing a higher likelihood of a category 4 or 5. But I would say that at this point, it's definitely on, that scenario is definitely on the table here. So with that in mind, we're going to just kind of let everything simmer for now. We'll be making more updates as needed. Particularly, we're going to be focusing a lot of the attention in regards to our coverage with this over towards the Caribbean, of course. But again, as far as the U.S. is concerned, we do need to be very vigilant over towards southern Florida and the Keys. But with that in mind, we're going to end the video here, and we'll be making updates as needed for now. As this thing strengthens, we may talk about it a bit more. But again, I thank you all for your time, and I will see you very soon. Until then, later.